What's up, everyone? We have an oldie but goodie. I swear I'm gonna do this video once a year, this time of the year. And here's why. I like doing videos on things I don't know anything about. I like talking about them. I like discussing them. I like hearing everyone else's opinions. I get a lot of mixed reviews on this. I hear a lot of mixed things. How about this? I hear a lot of the same things, but I don't really hear any facts behind them. They say they're facts. They say that this happens, but I don't see the results. The results don't match the findings. How about that? And I'll explain why. Okay, what are we talking about? The full moon. The full moon. Man, do we hear so much about this full moon. Does the full moon really affect the fishing? Yes, I do. I believe it does. I don't know how it does, but I believe it does. And here's why I don't believe everything you hear. Me and my fishing partner, and I hope he doesn't get mad about this, but he believes in the full moon and about bass spawning, or he brings it up. And I tell him, I said, hey man, this is the way I look at the full moon. Everyone says, okay, they're gonna spawn more in the full moon. He won't necessarily say that. He will say that they move shallow during the full moon. Shallow and spawning is two different things. I agree that they probably do move shallower during the full moon for whatever that means. I don't believe they necessarily make a push to spawn during the full moon. And let me explain why. Think about, let's take away fishing for a second. And I want you to think about this. When we want something to happen, we look for things, right? How many times you're like, you're going around going like, give me a sign, do something, and like lightning or strike, or like a tree branch or fall down or something, you're like, there's the sign. You look for things in life, right? Sometimes to make what you think be true. I think that with fishing a lot of times. I think you're like, oh man, look at what's going on right here. This is why it's doing it. This is why I'm catching these fish. I can't tell you how many times that, like, I'm not a big believer in the wind, right? Oh man, the wind started blowing and I started catching fish. You know, oh, the wind started blowing down those banks, so I went down those banks and that's why I'm catching them. Or you went down those banks that already had fish on them and the wind just happened to be blowing on them. Now, I'm not saying that some of those things can't be true, but then you go run 20 other banks with wind on it and don't catch any fish. How come? How come you didn't catch fish on those banks? The wind was blowing on them. Think about these tournaments now. These tournaments where all these guys are doing live scope. What we're finding out with live scope is that sometimes guys catch them and then the next time they don't. And then other guys keep catching them, right? There's always somebody else that goes against the rule, right? The rule of whatever you came up with. So the rule that there's a full moon, they must be spawning, it has to be true. However, we were just on Conroe fishing the Brandon Belt. By the way, I'm extremely, extremely tired. We went straight from the TXTT practice tournament straight into practice for the Toyota Series for however many days, right to the Toyota Series, to leave there to practice for the Brandon Belt for a day, and then 2 days of the Brandon Belt. Like 10 days of straight hardcore fishing. Was that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tournament days, 5 days of practice. It's been a long one, and I still haven't made it home. I stayed with my mom. I didn't even feel like driving all the way home. So I am doing this video because, once again, full moon. I mean bright moon. I mean the fullest of full moons you could ever ask for. Now, it is February. I get it. Late February down here, though, a little bit different. You can hear the birds outside, right? It's warm. I got a long sleeve shirt on just because I have a long sleeve shirt on, but the nights were like in the upper 50s. Last night was like 61. The water temp was a steady 60 degrees, getting up to 63, 64 degrees. Now, there were some fish on beds, yes. There weren't many. I mean, if you wanted to, like, when Conroe goes off, and I'm telling you, there were not many fish on beds. All the guys, we had a pretty big bag. We had 22 pounds on day 2. We went from 31st all the way up to like tied for 8th place. We know the guys who won it. We saw where they caught them. I would say half the guys in the top 10, or at least half the guys that caught them on day 2, we were all staring at each other. So, I mean, I know that those fish were not getting caught off beds. I'm not saying some guys didn't catch some fish off beds. We actually caught 2 fish off beds on day 1. We just had to go make something happen. It was a bad day. The day didn't turn out. We started in the wrong spot, all kinds of stuff, but we made up for it. It wasn't going off. That full moon didn't make all these fish go up there and start spawning. The water temp was close. The full moon was there. Everything was there, but it didn't happen. Now, the next full moon, it might happen. And someone's like, oh yeah, look, see, the full moon. I'm like, well, once again, you're looking for it. Maybe you go out there because maybe you're sitting there going, okay, they spawn on a full moon. I'm going to take that weekend off to go fishing, and you go catch them. You probably could have caught them 5, 6, 7, 8 days before that, and 5 or 6, 7 days after that. But you just looked at it as, that's the full moon, we're going to go catch them, and you went and caught them. You were probably catching them every single day going up into that. That's my point. A lot of times we look for things, and when it happens good for us, we sit there and pick things out that we're like, that's the reason why. What about the times when you don't catch them? What about the times when it doesn't work out? Right? So why didn't it work out? Why didn't the full moon make them go up this time? You can't just pick certain times and say, oh, this is why, and then forget about the other times. That was kind of my video. This is kind of the video I'm talking about. Is it like you can't pick and choose? In fishing, we can't pick and choose. You know how many times where a cold front comes through and we catch them? How about this? I'll give you another example. So Friday, the day before the tournament on Conroe, the front came through. It was north wind. It blew all day long. It was insane, the amount of bites we had. Talked to a lot of people. We all caught them that day. The front. A lot of times we say cold fronts in the springtime mess up the fishing. And they say like it's going to be bad. And this front comes through. It wasn't crazy cold, but it was cold. And they absolutely chewed. It was insane, right? Like we had to get off the water because we were getting so many bites. It was great. Saturday comes along and we struggled. A lot of people struggled, a lot. We struggled, and this is why. Because I talked to some guys. So many guys didn't catch them where they started off at. So I know we didn't catch them right off the bat. I know we were around a bunch of people. We could see no one was catching them. When we got to even to our next spot, when we started finally catching some fish, we saw other people catch fish. It was like 10 o'clock. Everyone we saw catch a fish, put them in their live wells. No one had a limit. We only talked to one other boat, somebody of ours. They had a limit. They were the only team we talked to at like 11:30 or 11 that had a limit. Now, granted, that was the only people we saw in the water, but we were around 7 or 8 boats, and every single time we saw someone catch a fish, they put it in the live well. We were too. And eventually, everyone started culling. Eventually. And then it got really good late in the day. Like, talked to a lot of guys after the tournament. They talked about when they caught them. Now, one team, and we all get a little bit chatty. We don't mind talking after the event. And a lot of us were all talking. And the guy was like, hey, man, yeah, man, we caught all of our fish Saturday morning at 8:30. We had most of our fish. They also caught their fish a little bit different than everyone else. Like, they were kind of doing things a little bit different. We noticed them. I'm like, man, they're the only boat doing that. Those fish didn't stop biting. Those guys were probably the only ones around them. They moved. They were in a little bit different area, a little bit different depth of water. They didn't stop biting. And what I've realized with live scope and all this stuff, rarely do they stop biting. They just moved on you. I'm completely shocked about the fact that for all these years when I thought the water got cold, that they stopped biting. No, they don't stop biting. They're just different. And they just moved to different areas. And then all of a sudden, the day, Saturday was the day after the front. It was dead calm, dead still. Everyone's like, oh, we need a little wind. We need a little of that. No, we all started catching them later on in the day. The wind didn't start blowing. Nothing really changed. It got warmer. And guess what? Those fish moved back to where we were all fishing. We didn't go find the fish. The fish moved to where we were at. We all got lucky. If we had stayed with the fish and did what the other guy was doing right off the bat and then slowly made our way closer to the bank, we all would have caught him the whole day, not just the beginning of the day or not just the end of the day. Now, what's the worst day after a front? Everyone's told us that, 2 days. The second day after the front's the worst day, right? That was yesterday. We smashed on them. We smashed on them all day long. Most of the guys did. There were bigger bags on day 2, second day after the front, after everyone had been crushing on fish that for the day before, bigger bags on day 2, right? It didn't fit into that rule of the second day after a front. See what I'm saying? If there's all these exceptions to fishing, they can't be rules. They can't be legit, locked in, concrete rules. This full moon thing, look, I get it. I get that they say that they might spawn days before the full moon or right after the full moon, or it makes them push up. Maybe so. All I'm saying is from now on, think about all the days where you've heard something. What is it? You know, wind blows from the east, fish bite the least, all those different sayings, all the things you've heard. And then look for the exception. Look for like, well, wait a minute, this didn't fit that rule. Be careful about those rules you want to follow. It seems like the longer I fish, the more I don't trust those rules. They might be close at times, or we're just looking for something. We're looking for like, yep, that's why we're catching them. Rather than just going, maybe there are other factors involved. You know, maybe you're just a better fisherman sometimes and you catch them and you get on a better pattern. And that's why you caught them. It has nothing to do with this rule of fishing, these laws of fishing. Because I can tell you one thing, so many of us, we don't catch them. We don't catch them as good as the other guy. And so many times the other guy was just doing something different. And it had nothing to do with all these rules. It's just a better way of fishing. Maybe it's the better way of fishing and not the rule. I don't know. Something for y'all guys to think about. All right. See y'all.